Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into a really interesting book. It makes this, well, pretty bold promise, actually,
Which is?
to be a shortcut to big success in relationships. Personal, professional, the whole deal.
Okay, sounds ambitious. How?
Using these, surprisingly simple, really actionable techniques.
Yes, we're talking How to Talk to Anyone, 92 Little Tricks for Big Success in Relationships by Leil Lowndes.
That's the one. And it's not your typical sort of abstract self-help book, is it?
No, not at all. It's definitely in that communication skills space, but Lowndes has this really unique angle.
Yep.
She basically argues that, great communication, it's not some magic charisma you're just born with.
Right, not some innate gift.
Exactly. It's a skill. And it's built on these specific observable behaviors and verbal strategies she calls little tricks. 92 of them, apparently.
92, that's a lot of tricks.
It is. But her whole core idea is that these qualities we admire, confidence, presence, that ability some people have to just, captivate a room, they aren't mysteries. You can actually break them down, learn them, practice them. Each trick is like a specific tool for your communication toolkit.
Okay, so for this deep dive, our mission is basically to unpack some of the most intriguing and maybe most impactful ones.
Yeah, let's look at not just what they are, but how you could actually start using them.
Right, to improve interactions, whether it's a big meeting, making new friends.
Or just figuring out the subtle dance of human interaction day to day.
Exactly. Giving people practical ways to handle those moments where communication just feels awkward or intimidating.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Okay, let's get into it. Lowndes kicks things off with something pretty powerful. The first impression. She says you've only got about, 10 seconds?
10 seconds, yeah. And the really interesting part is she claims you can intrigue people without saying a single word.
That feels backward, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We always worry about the perfect opening line.
I know, but she argues that way before our rational brain kicks in, people get this kind of sixth sense about you.
Based on?
Based on what she calls subliminal moves. These
Yeah.
Physical things, reactions. They operate below conscious awareness, but they have this huge power to either draw people in or, push them away.
Okay, so what's the first trick for this silent impression?
Technique number 1, the flooding smile. And this is a great example of making something simple into a real skill. It's not just, flashing a smile.
It's more specific than that.
Way more specific. It's about deliberately not smiling right away, holding back for just a split second.
Okay.
The technique is you look at the person's face, you pause for just a beat, really take them in their vibe, their persona.
Soak it in for a second.
Exactly. Then you let this big, warm, genuine smile slowly spread across your face and, crucially, into your eyes.
The pause. That's the key bit.
That pause is everything because that tiny delay, it convinces the other person that your smile is real and maybe even more importantly that it's just for them.
It makes them feel singled out
Right.
in a good way.
Totally. They're special. They cause that smile, not just that you smile at everyone like that. Lowndes tells this story about her friend Missy,
Oh, yeah.
who became Melissa, the CEO. And when she walked into this business dinner, her smile was still charming, but it had that little intentional pause. It signaled her new status, made her seem more like a somebody, purposeful.
So it's about making the smile feel personal, earned, just by delaying it a tiny bit. Okay. Building on the face, she then moves up to the eyes, calls it one of the most powerful tools we have.
Absolutely. And this brings us to techniques number 2 and 3. Sticky eyes and epoxy eyes.
Sticky eyes. Sounds intriguing.
Yeah, it's about using intense eye contact. Sticky eyes, technique number 2, means maintaining strong eye contact even when there's silence in the conversation.
Even during the awkward pauses.
Especially then. Lowndes suggests this gives the impression that you're an intelligent, abstract thinker because your focus isn't darting around, you're fully absorbed, maybe deep in thought, or just listening really, really intently.
She mentions a study, doesn't she? The Boston one.
Right. That fascinating study where people had these short 2-minute conversations. One group was secretly told to count how many times their partner blinked.
Which forced them to maintain really intense eye contact?
Exactly. And the result, the people who were being stared at the unknowing blinkers, they reported feeling significantly more respect and even fondness for the person who was, staring at them.
Wow. Just from eye contact.
It really shows the subconscious impact, doesn't it? Lowndes apparently experienced this herself at a seminar. A woman held intense eye contact with her the whole time, and it made Lowndes feel captivating, made her remember points she might have forgotten otherwise. It was inspiring.
That makes total sense. If someone's looking at you that intently, you feel like you have their complete attention. It's validating. Okay, so what's epoxy eyes then? That sounds even stronger.
It is. Technique number 3, epoxy eyes, is the extreme version.
Yes.
With this one, you keep up that intense gaze not just when the person is talking to you, but even when someone else in the group is speaking. You keep your eyes locked on the person you want to impact.
Whoa, okay.
And the book talks about a biological reaction here, which is where it gets pretty wild.
Biological.
Yeah. Looking at someone that intently can actually increase their heartbeat and release chemicals like adrenaline, a physical response that's similar to the early stages of falling in love or feeling intense attraction.
Seriously. So you can kind of induce feelings.
By consciously using this gaze, she suggests you can make people feel like they've completely captivated you. It can create really strong feelings.
Okay, hold on. That sounds potentially problematic.
Yeah.
Powerful, yes. But is there a downside? A catch?
Huge catch. Absolutely critical point, Lowndes stresses. Epoxy eyes only works if the other person already finds you attractive, at least somewhat. If there's zero initial attraction, that intense stare isn't going to spark fascination. It's just going to seem obnoxious, weird, maybe even creepy.
Right, that makes sense.
And she gives a really strong warning. Never use epoxy eyes on strangers in public. Ever. You could get some seriously bad reactions, maybe even legal trouble.
So it's not for picking up strangers on the subway?
Definitely not. It's meant for situations where there's already some potential mutual interest, like the clever Romeos. She mentions using it for romance. Context and perceived interest are absolutely key. High risk, high reward kind of thing.
Got it. Okay, smile, eyes. What's next for the silent treatment? Posture. Technique number 4, hang by your teeth. I love the image that creates.
Yeah, it's vivid. Posture is presented as this major signal of confidence and success. Lowndes suggests a quick mental exercise before you walk into any room, an office, a party, a meeting, even your own kitchen.
What's the exercise?
You visualize yourself as like a top acrobat doing an iron jaw act. Picture biting down on an imaginary dental grip hanging right above the door frame.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And this imaginary grip pulls you straight up.
Pulls you up?
Effortlessly aligns your whole body. Head high, shoulders back, torso lifted out of your hips, feet feeling light like you're being supported from above. As you walk through the door, you imagine being pulled up like that acrobat hitting their peak pose.
And the effect of this visualization is?
It creates the posture of a big winner. It makes you look like somebody proud, successful, vital. Lowndes apparently counted how many times she walked through a doorway in a day, like 60 times.
60. Wow.
And she says, if you visualize anything 60 times a day, it becomes automatic. So practicing this visualization regularly leads to habitually great posture. She sees that as a fundamental mark of successful people, mentioning the perfect alignment of the Wallenda acrobats taking their bows.
So just with these nonverbal cues, smile, eyes, posture, before you even open your mouth, you're communicating confidence, presence, interest.
Exactly. And Lowndes really hammers home that people are constantly giving off these subconscious signals, these subliminal moves, and others are reading them, often without even realizing it.
Right? She talks about how skilled observers can pick up on this stuff.
Yeah, it's not just what you consciously project, it's the signals you're emitting underneath. She gives the example of trial lawyers hiring assistants, often women, who were seen as sharper observers of subtle cues, specifically to watch potential jurors. Every fidget, every twitch, every squirm, they used these unconscious signals to judge if someone was right for the jury.
That's intense. And there was that story about the lawyer William Kunstler during the Chicago 7 trial.
Oh, yeah. William Kunstler actually made a formal objection in court based on Judge Julius Hoffman's posture.
Based on his posture? Seriously?
Seriously. Kunstler argued the judge leaned forward, showing interest when the prosecution spoke, but then leaned back, looking bored, when the defense presented their case. And this wasn't just courtroom theatrics. It shows how powerful these nonverbal signals are and how aware the real pros are of them.
It really makes you wonder what signals you're sending out without knowing it. Okay, so you've made this compelling, silent first impression. Now comes the hard part for a lot of people, actually opening your mouth, starting and keeping a conversation going.
Absolutely. That's the next big hurdle. And Lowndes has techniques for this too to make it less terrifying, like techniques, #5 and #6, treat people like big babies, and hello, old friend.
Treat people like big babies.
Yeah, it sounds weird, but they're related. It's about your internal mindset when you meet someone new. The idea is to generate genuine warmth and enthusiasm, approaching them like they're a long-lost friend you're just absolutely thrilled to see again.
How do you manufacture that feeling?
For treat people like big babies, you literally imagine the person as someone you're super excited to meet. Let that feeling of delight just wash over your face and body language. Lowndes uses these metaphors like you're a beaming light or a dog wagging its tail.
Okay.
And with hello, old friend, it's similar, but you specifically imagine reuniting with a dear friend after a long time apart. That specific feeling.
But you don't, actually act overly familiar or weird on the outside.
No, exactly. You still use normal greetings. Hello, how do you do? Pleased to meet you. The magic is internal. That feeling of delight subtly changes your nonverbals, your gaze softens, your posture shifts slightly. There's genuine warmth in your voice.
So it makes the other person feel special and they react positively.
Usually, yeah. It makes them feel really welcomed and valued. She contrasts this with her friend Carla at a party, who was giving off these minimal, almost dismissive vibes to guys approaching her, while the author was using this hello, old friend trick internally and making people feel instantly comfortable.
It's like priming your own pump to send out better signals. Yeah. Okay, classic awkward question time. Where are you from? People hate asking it, hate answering it. Lowndes has technique, #14, never the naked city.
Yes. Avoid the one-word answer at all costs. Just saying Chicago or London, it's a conversational dead end, leaves the other person completely stranded.
Nothing to grab onto.
Right. She compares it to fishing. You need to throw out some bait. And she says you need different bait for shrimp or sharks, meaning you tailor the interesting tidbit you offer to the person you're talking to.
So instead of just the city name, you add a little something extra, a hook.
Precisely, a conversational hook. If you're from Washington, D.C., and you're talking to someone who seems into architecture, maybe you say, it was designed by the same city planner who designed Paris.
Ooh, nice. That opens up loads of possibilities.
Exactly. City planning, architecture, Paris, travel, whatever catches their interest. Or if they seem literary and you're from Columbus, Ohio, maybe mention it's the home of artist George Bellows.
Or she even suggests just listing random facts, like how many other towns share the name.
Yeah, like mentioning there are over a dozen other Columbuses in the U.S. Suddenly they have 15 states they could ask you about. The whole point is to offer multiple hooks, make yourself sound more interesting, and make it easy for the other person to ask a follow-up question. As she quotes, "No man would listen to you talk if he didn't know it was his turn next." You're setting them up nicely.
That's brilliant. It takes the pressure off them.
Yeah.
Okay, the other classic question, what do you do? Again, she says don't just give your job title the naked answer. You've got to flesh it out.
Absolutely. Just saying I'm an accountant or I'm a software engineer can make the other person feel like a total outsider, like they have no idea what to say next. You need to explain it in a way that offers those conversational hooks again.
So add interesting facts, or she mentioned something else. A benefit statement?
Yes, a benefit statement, or what she calls a nutshell resume for your job. That's even better.
How does that work? A benefit statement for your job.
Instead of the technical description, you talk about how your job helps people or the interesting problems you solve. So not, I'm a hairdresser, but maybe, I help women find the perfect hairstyle for their face shape and lifestyle.
Focus on the outcome or the value.
Exactly. Instead of a dry title, you give this little summary of your job's value or function that anyone can understand and respond to. Lowndes suggests actually preparing these little nutshell resumes beforehand for both work and social situations, so you're always ready with an engaging answer.
Okay, good prep advice. So you've started the chat, offered hooks, described your job engagingly. How do you keep it going without feeling like you have to be brilliantly witty every second? Technique, #18, parroting.
Parroting. This one is so simple, but surprisingly effective for keeping the other person talking and showing you're actually listening.
What is it exactly?
You just repeat the last, say, 1 to 3 words the other person said, but you say it with a slight upward inflection, like a question.
Can you give that taxi driver example from the book? That made it really clear.
Oh, yeah. The author's in a taxi. Driver mentions going to the theater. Author tries the technique, just says theater. Driver says, yeah, great show. Author, great show. Driver, yeah, Sweeney Todd. Author, Sweeney Todd.
And the driver just kept going.
Totally. Launched into the whole story of the play. It works because it gently prompts them to elaborate, shows you're tuned in, and crucially, it takes all the pressure off you to think of the next thing to say.
It's like conversational jujitsu. Use their momentum.
Exactly. It's the perfect cure for that, oh God, what do I say next? Panic. And Lowndes adds a neat twist. If the conversation wanders somewhere boring, you can gently steer it back by parroting a phrase from an earlier, more interesting point.
Clever. Okay, what if you're in a group and you want to shine the spotlight on someone else? Maybe someone shy or someone with a great story you've heard before. Technique, #21. Encore.
Ah, encore. This is a fantastic way to make someone feel good and keep the group conversation lively. If you know someone has a good story, you turn to them in front of the new group and say something like, David, you have to tell everyone about that time you backpacked through Vietnam.
They might hesitate, but you push a bit.
Yeah, Lowndes says you insist gently because secretly they're loving it. The message is, your story was so awesome, this new audience needs to hear it. It implies they're a great storyteller, a crowd pleaser.
And while they're telling their amazing story,
You can relax and listen, maybe ask a prompting question, or if you need to, you can even discreetly slip away to talk to someone else. She used this on a cruise ship, getting the officers to retell their dramatic rescue story to different passenger groups. They enjoyed it, and it helped her mingle.
all these techniques seem to point towards being prepared, having something to offer, or knowing how to draw people out. Technique #23 is basically just always have something interesting to say.
Pretty much. It comes down to being informed. Lowndes suggests listening to the news before you go out, reading widely, just having some current events or interesting topics in your back pocket so you're not caught completely empty-handed.
And she links this to the who's at technique for meeting people.
Yeah. Who's At is a practical tool for parties. See someone interesting across the room. Go to the host and discreetly ask, who's that person over there?
Who is that?
Exactly. You can ask the host for an intro, or if you're feeling brave, you can just pump the host for a little info. Their job, a hobby, where they're from, anything that gives you an immediate opening line.
So the host says, oh, that's Sarah. She just got back from volunteering in Costa Rica.
Right. And then you can walk over and say, hi, you must be Sarah. Host name was just telling me you were volunteering in Costa Rica. That sounds incredible. What kind of work were you doing? Instant conversation starter.
Give you a specific in.
Totally. Lowndes mentions Sydney Biddlebarrows, the Mayflower madam, apparently required her escorts to read major newspapers every day.
Seriously.
So they'd always have something intelligent and interesting to discuss with their clients. It just shows that being prepared with conversational material is a classic technique used in all sorts of contexts.
Okay. This whole conversation about starting conversations really touches on a big fear many people have. Small talk. Even really successful people apparently dread it.
Oh, absolutely. Lowndes basically equates the fear of small talk with stage fright. It's a kind of performance anxiety. She lists top executives, famous musicians like Pablo Casals, Carly Simon, Neil Diamond, all people who apparently felt really uncomfortable with it.
So what's the cure? It's not just get over it, presumably.
Surprisingly practical, actually. She argues the real antidote to hating small talk is simply knowing solid techniques, having those concrete skills to fall back on.
Having a toolkit.
Exactly. When you feel prepared, when you know how to handle introductions and keep things flowing, your brain kind of creates its own anti-anxiety medicine. She tells that story about Senator Hayakawa during World War II.
Oh, right. The one about calming the suspicious couple.
Yeah. He started with completely harmless, agreeable small talk about the war, totally banal stuff, before revealing his parents were actually in Japan. Those seemingly superficial opening remarks built just enough trust that they invited him to dinner. It shows how effective, even necessary, simple, unoriginal first words can be. Confidence comes from having a script, even a mental one.
Okay, so once the conversation is flowing, the book moves into talking like a VIP, building deeper rapport. It's about how your language and just your general vibe signal status, confidence, connection.
And one really quick way to sabotage that VIP impression, according to Lowndes, is technique #30. Don't touch a cliche with a 10-foot pole.
Simple enough, just avoid cliches.
Pretty much, especially when you're talking to people she calls big winners, successful types. She's really blunt about it. Cliches make you sound uncommonly common, less original, less intelligent. Her advice is basically just don't use them. Never. Not even when hell freezes over. Not unless you want to sound dumb as a doorknob.
Okay, message received. No cliches. So instead of tired old phrases,
Instead, she suggests technique, #31. Use Jaw Smith's jive.
Jaw Smith's jive. What's that?
It's about using memorable, clever, maybe even quotable phrases in your conversation. You can collect famous quotes, sure, but she thinks the best way is to actually come up with your own little witty remarks, crazy quotables, she calls them, that fit the specific situation. Make them funny, clever, maybe even rhyme.
Can you give some examples she uses? Those were quite good.
Yeah, like the executives in a tough financial meeting who deadpanned that the company had plenty of money unless we pay our creditors. Dark humor, but memorable.
Really?
Or the vet who called a complex leg surgery on a bird a drumstick transplant and got national press for it. These kinds of unique phrases make you sound witty, smart, and way more likely to be remembered, maybe even quoted.
But like a lot of these, there's a warning attached, right?
Oh, a crucial one. Lowndes apparently learned this the hard way. She read some English love poems on a cruise to England, huge hit. Tried the same poems on a Caribbean cruise. Total bomb. Yeah. The Jaw Smith's jive has to fit the context and the audience. You can't just force cleverness where it doesn't belong.
Makes sense. She also touches on vocabulary briefly. Using richer words makes you seem smarter if they fit and sound natural. And she's really down on teasing.
Very down on it. Calls it a sign of being a little cat, whereas big cats avoid it. Making jokes at someone else's expense, even if it seems light, comes across as immature and insecure. Puts a black mark on you, she says, no matter how the person being teased reacts.
Okay. Now this next one. Technique, #27. Kill the quick me too.
This felt really counterintuitive to me. When you find something in common, like you both love sci-fi movies, the instinct is yell me too, right?
Totally. The instinct.
Right.
But Lowndes says no, resist.
Why?
She argues that the longer you wait to reveal you share something, the more impressed and moved the other person will be when they finally find out. The instant me too can seem a bit desperate, like you're just grasping for any connection.
So instead of blurting it out, you should listen first. Actively listen while they talk about their interest. Ask them questions about their experience with it. Show genuine curiosity about them.
And then reveal it later.
Yeah, maybe when the topic comes back around, or just when it feels natural, you casually mention, oh yeah, I love sci-fi too.
She tells that story about listening to the woman talk about visiting Washington, D.C.
Exactly, which was the author's hometown. But she just listened, genuinely enjoyed hearing a visitor's take, asked about their hotel, restaurants. Then later, when the woman said something like, you seem to know D.C. well, Lowndes casually said, oh yes, it's actually my hometown, though I haven't been back in ages.
And the woman was surprised.
Totally surprised and delighted, said something like, goodness, why didn't you tell me? I must have bored you. And the author could honestly say no, she wasn't bored. It shows the power of listening first. You come across as this confident big cat who's interested in them, and the later reveal of the shared interest feels more significant, more impactful.
But you can't wait too long, she warns, or it starts to feel weird, like you were hiding it.
Right, it's a fine line. You have to read the room, feel the timing.
Another language-focused one. #28 communication. This is all about centering the other person in your sentences.
Yeah, Lowndes makes this pretty bold claim that the word you is actually more powerful than the word sex X for grabbing attention.
That's a statement.
It is. But the point is clear. People are fundamentally interested in themselves. So if you translate everything into their terms, start sentences with you whenever possible, you make it immediately relevant and engaging for them. You're basically doing the mental work of highlighting the benefit to them.
What's the classic example for that one?
Instead of saying, I recommend the new Italian place, which is all about you flip it. Jane, you would really love this new Italian place. The carbonara is amazing, and I think you'd really enjoy the atmosphere. Would you like to join me tonight?
Framing it around Jane's potential enjoyment.
Exactly. It appeals to their self-interest, the pleasure-pain principle she talks about. It feels more considerate, more persuasive, and makes them much more likely to say yes.
Okay, what about dealing with tricky situations, like nosy questions you don't want to answer? Technique, #35. The broken record.
This is such a neat, polite way to shut down persistence without causing a scene. If someone keeps asking about a sensitive topic after you've already answered or made it clear you won't discuss it, you just repeat your original answer, word for word, using the exact same calm tone of voice every single time they ask again.
And that actually works. People back off.
Lowndes says, yeah, usually. The person asking realizes they're not getting anywhere, and their repeated questioning starts to look really rude to everyone else. She gives the example of her client Barbara, whose business partner was also her ex-husband messy situation.
Right.
At a party, some guests kept probing. Barbara just calmly ate her dessert and repeated, "We've separated, but the company is unaffected." 3 times, same flat tone. The guest eventually gave up. It's like hitting a polite brick wall.
It disarms them because you're not getting flustered or defensive,
Yeah.
just repeating. Okay, what about meeting famous people or VIPs? Technique, #36. Big shots, don't slobber.
Right. This is all about keeping your cool and respecting their space and, their need for normalcy. If you see a celebrity, act cool. Let them have their anonymity. If they happen to look your way, a quick brief nod and smile is enough, then look away or back to your companion.
So no running over screaming, "I love your work!"
Definitely not. Gushing is the opposite of being a big shot, she says. If you do get a chance to talk to them, don't fawn. Just state simply how their work gave you pleasure or some insight. If you compliment them, make it about something recent.
And if they're with someone.
Crucially, include that person in the conversation. It makes you seem confident, like a fellow VIP who gets it, and it respects their desire for a normal interaction when they're off duty. And she specifically warns, don't ask them to perform. Don't ask the singer to sing or the actor to recite something at a party.
Treat them like a person, basically, while still acknowledging their work politely. Simple, but probably hard to do in the moment. And speaking of simple but powerful technique, #37, never the naked thank you.
Yeah, this is a tiny tweak with a big impact. Instead of just a plain thank you, you always add why you're thankful, a specific reason.
Like, thank you for being so patient.
Exactly. Or thank you for waiting. Thank you for explaining that. Thank you for putting up with my questions. Adding the specific reason makes the gratitude feel more meaningful, shows you're a good communicator, and this is key. It encourages the other person to keep being helpful or kind to you in the future. Lowndes tells that slightly over-the-top story about thanking the airline pilots for getting us here and how grateful they were in return, just showing that positive feedback loop.
Okay, to build closeness quickly, especially with new people, she has technique, #49, the premature WE.
This involves sprinkling in collective pronouns we, us, our, a bit earlier in a conversation than might feel strictly logical. You skip purely factual individual statements, I think my feeling is, and jump to creating a shared perspective using we.
How does that build intimacy?
Yeah.
Seems a bit forced.
Lowndes thinks it subtly messes with the other person's subconscious, creating this feeling of instant connection and shared experience, even if you just met. It implies you're already on the same team, seeing things together. A simple example might be saying to someone new, wow, if we keep getting this amazing weather, our summer is going to be fantastic. It creates a little shared bubble.
And related to that shared feeling, technique, #50, create a friendly, private joke.
This is about cultivating those little shared moments or observations that become inside jokes just between the two of you. Whispering phrases that mean nothing to anyone else, finding humor in a shared awkward moment, chuckling over something that happened earlier that only you two would get.
That definitely creates a feeling of connection, doesn't it? Exclusivity.
Totally. It builds that unique bond, that sense of us against the world, even in a small way. Deepens the connection.
Okay, let's talk praise. Lowndes says it's super powerful, but only if it's sincere. Fake praise or obvious brown-nosing is damaging.
Yeah, that sincerity line is critical. Inauthentic praise is worse than nothing. So she offers ways to deliver praise effectively. Technique, #51, is grapevine glory.
Complimenting someone.
Yeah.
Indirectly, how's that work?
You tell a mutual friend or colleague something positive about the person you want to praise, knowing, maybe even intending that it'll get back to them through the grapevine.
So instead of telling my boss directly, great presentation, I tell a coworker, wow, boss's name really nailed that presentation, especially how she handled that tricky question from finance.
Exactly. Lowndes argues this bypasses the suspicion of sucking up that a direct compliment might trigger, especially up the hierarchy. A compliment that's overheard or relayed feels more genuine. It makes the person feel like you're telling everyone how great they are, which is incredibly flattering. She quotes that old saying, he's my friend that speaks well of me behind my back.
Nice. And there were related ones like carrier pigeon, #52, and accidental adulation, #54.
Yeah, they're all about being a source of good vibes. Carrier pigeon is just relaying positive things you've heard other people say about someone. Hey, I heard Mark saying how much he appreciated your help yesterday.
Okay.
Accidental adulation technique, #54, is really clever. You sort of slip the praise into the background of your sentence, like in verbal parentheses, almost as if it popped out by accident.
Give me an example of that.
Like telling a super fit friend, wow, anyone as fit as you would have breezed up those stairs, but man, was I out of breath.
Ah, so you're talking about yourself, but the compliment about their fitness lands subtly.
Exactly. It feels unintentional, therefore more sincere. Lowndes says it makes the praise hit harder, but she does warn that the person might get so caught up enjoying the accidental adulation that they temporarily miss the main point of what you were saying.
Okay. For a really big, impactful compliment, there's technique, #55, killer compliment.
This one is described as potentially life-changing, powerful enough to spark major relationships, business partners, best friends, even romance. It's a specific, deeply sincere compliment about a core quality or a significant achievement, not just, nice shoes.
But it's not just what you say.
No, the delivery is crucial. How and when you say it matters just as much.
And there's a strict user's manual for this one, right?
Yes. 3 key rules for the killer compliment. Rule #1, deliver it in private. Praising someone that deeply in front of others can make them feel awkward and the others feel left out.
Okay.
Rule #2, make it believable, has to be genuine, not over-the-top flattery. Rule #3, make it specific. Not just you're amazing, but reference a specific action or trait that demonstrates that amazing quality. Lowndes tells a story about her roommate Christine giving her this incredibly specific compliment after a party about how she handled a particular conversation. And it was unforgettable because it showed Christine had really seen and understood a deep part of her.
So specific, private, believable. Got it. Alongside those big moments, she also pushes for smaller, regular acknowledgments. Technique, #56. Itty-bitty boosters.
Yeah, these are just frequent, small words of appreciation. Verbal, little strokes, she calls them. Simple stuff. Nice job. Well done. Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for that.
It reminds me of those song lyrics she quotes, little things mean a lot.
They really do. These little boosters let people, colleagues, friends, family know you appreciate them on an ongoing basis. It stops them from wondering, doesn't anyone notice what I do? It proactively meets that need for recognition for everyday efforts.
Okay, flip side, what about when you get a compliment? How do you accept it without just mumbling thanks or dismissing it? Technique, #58, boomeranging.
This is about accepting gracefully and turning the positive energy back to the giver. Avoid the quick thanks or worse, oh, it was nothing. Instead, you say something like, that's very kind of you, or that's thoughtful of you to say, like the French, vous êtes gentil.
Okay, acknowledge their kindness.
Right. And then you find a way to compliment them for their compliment or their perceptiveness.
So maybe that's so nice of you to say, I really appreciate you noticing.
Exactly. Or if they praise your report, thank you. That means a lot coming from you. You always have such great insights. You boomerang the good feeling back. It reinforces their positive action and makes them feel good about complimenting you.
And for the really deep connections, people you know and love, there's the slightly morbid sounding technique, #59, the tombstone game.
It sounds heavy, but it's actually incredibly insightful. It's about connecting with someone's deepest sense of who they are.
How does it work?
The setup involves mentioning, maybe casually, that you were reading about what people fantasize, having written on their tombstones usually. It reflects the quality they're most proud of, their core self-image.
Okay.
Then, using your deep knowledge of the person you're talking to, you deliver a compliment that speaks directly to that quality, the thing you know they value most about themselves.
So you're not guessing. You're using what you know about them to hit that core pride point.
Precisely. Lowndes says the effect can be overwhelming. It makes your loved one feel truly seen and appreciated for who they truly are, validating their deepest self-image. She gives examples like people wanting to be remembered for being a man of his word, or she lived life her way, or he made people laugh. The power is in matching the compliment to their internal self-perception. When you nail it, she says, it makes them feel like you're the person, a partner, friend, whatever, who truly gets them.
Wow, that's taking specific compliments to a whole new level. Deep validation. Okay, let's switch gears, navigating specific situations like phone calls, parties, asking for favors. The basic ideas still apply, but you need slightly different techniques, right?
Absolutely. The context changes things. Like on the phone, all your body language is gone. Your personality has to come through purely in sound. Technique, #60 is sound more exciting on the phone.
How do you do that without sounding phony?
You have to consciously amp up your energy and emotion a bit in your voice. Lowndes mentions studies suggesting we lose about 30% of our vocal energy over the phone. So what sounds normal to you might come across as flat or bored to the listener.
So slightly exaggerate the enthusiasm and tone variation?
Yeah, just enough to make sure your personality cuts through the technology. She tells that story about Ronnie, the travel agent, who sounded really abrupt on the phone but was lovely in person. Shows how easily nuance gets lost without visuals. Think about radio actors. They convey everything with just their voice.
Good point. And to make up for the lack of eye contact on the phone, technique, #61, name, shower.
This just means using the caller's name more often on the phone than you would face-to-face.
Why more often?
In person, saying someone's name too much can sound like you're trying too hard, maybe a bit smarmy. But on the phone, that distance means using their name feels less intrusive. It helps recreate that feeling of direct connection, grabs their attention. People instinctively perk up when they hear their name, and on the phone, it helps keep them engaged with just your voice.
Okay, how about politely screening calls you don't want to take right now? Technique, #63, the sneaky screen.
The aim here is to avoid taking a call without making the caller feel blown off or unimportant. The trick Lowndes suggests is having your assistant or whoever answer say something really cheerful and immediate, like, "Oh yes, I'll put you right through to your name. May I tell her who's calling?"
Making it sound like connection is imminent.
Exactly. Or, "Oh, of course, Miss Davis, let me put you right through." Then, if you are screening them and unavailable, the assistant comes back and says so.
And people actually fall for this.
Lowndes claims they do, because that initial enthusiastic, "I'll put you right through," makes them believe they were about to be connected. When they find out you're unavailable, they tend to assume it was just bad timing, not a deliberate screen. She even admits she fell for it herself.
Huh. Okay. Even your voicemail message makes an impression. Technique, #66. Impress everyone with your outgoing voicemail message.
Right, your voicemail is like a little reflection of your professionalism. Lowndes says keep it friendly, neutral, but most importantly, keep it updated. Ideally, she says, change it every single day.
Every day, wow.
Yeah. Include the date and maybe when you expect to be back or checking messages, especially if people need timely responses. She says studies show callers perceive you as brighter and more efficient if they hear a current message. It manages expectations, keep it short and professional for business no long, quirky messages. Just a quick dated message shows you're on the ball.
Good tip. And getting past gatekeepers, secretaries, assistants on the phone, technique, #68. The ho-hum caper.
This one leverages familiarity. Instead of formally asking, "May I speak to Mr. Big Shot, please?" You adopt this slightly casual, maybe even slightly bored ho-hum, just another call tone.
And just say,
"Hi, Jane Doe calling, is he in?" Using the pronoun he or she.
so is she in? Instead of, may I speak to Miss Big Shot?
Exactly. That casual pronoun signals to the gatekeeper that you and the boss are presumably buddies you call all the time. It makes them much less likely to screen you because they figure you have a personal connection. Lowndes compares it to how she used to confidently walk past restroom attendants by acting like she belonged. Same principle of assumed familiarity.
Okay, shifting scenes now to parties, mixers, networking events. These have their own rules of engagement. Lowndes uses techniques, #83 and #84. Parties are for pratter and dinners for dining, to talk about matching the conversation type to the setting.
Right. Parties and dinner tables are described as safe havens with specific conversational boundaries. Parties are for light, pleasant chat, making connections. Fellowship, which she calls pratter, not for intense negotiations or confrontations.
And dinner table.
Dinner tables are for relaxed discussion, maybe brainstorming positive stuff, but absolutely no tough or unpleasant business talk, and definitely no confronting enemies across the dinner table.
So save the difficult conversations for the office.
Pretty much. Lowndes notes that even during long business lunches, the really tough negotiations often wait until after dessert. Respecting these boundaries shows you have social and business savvy, and you avoid making everyone uncomfortable or ruining the mood.
How you physically enter the party matters too. Technique, #72, rubberneck the room, and the related idea of making an unforgettable entrance.
Yeah, instead of just slipping in unnoticed, Lowndes suggests pausing dramatically in the doorway when you arrive, just for a moment, and slowly scan the room, letting your eyes sweep back and forth.
Like you own the place.
Kind of. Like a confident VIP surveying their domain. It makes you look like a somebody immediately. And it also gives you a strategic advantage. You quickly see who's there, spot people you know, identify potential conversation targets. Combine that with the hang by your teeth posture we talked about. Pow. Instant presence. Yeah. Politicians apparently use this a lot.
Okay. Once you're in, how do you seem approachable? Technique, #74. Come hit her hands.
This is all about open body language, especially using your hands and wrists to signal welcome. Be a human magnet, not a human repellent.
Oh.
Keep your body position open. Avoid crossed arms, clenched fists. Showing your palms up, is a particularly strong signal of openness, vulnerability, acceptance.
Like the Pope's gesture. Or someone showing they're unarmed.
Exactly. Those kinds of associations. People are instinctively drawn to open, welcoming body language. It makes them feel safer and more comfortable approaching you.
Now, a technique Lowndes connects to politicians, but useful for anyone remembering tiny details about people. Technique, #75, tracking.
This is about paying super close attention when important context mentions seemingly insignificant things, what they ate for breakfast, their uncomfortable shoes, a weird habit like being disciplined about flossing.
And then you bring it up later.
Yeah, casually refer back to it later on. Hey, how are those new shoes treating you? Or still sticking to the flossing routine.
How do people, especially politicians, remember all that stuff about so many people?
Lowndes mentions they often use tricks like business card dossier, technique, #76. After meeting someone, they quickly scribble notes on the back of the card, appearance, interests, those little details.
And the effect of bringing up these small details.
It's huge. It makes the other person feel like an absolute superstar in your eyes, like they're so memorable, you recalled this tiny specific thing about them. It shows you pay attention, you value them, and it creates this really powerful sense of connection and intimacy.
Okay, going back to the idea that success relies on help from others. Favors. Lowndes says the world goes round on favors, but you have to handle them right. Technique, #80. Bear the buried YFM and YFA.
YFM, what's in it for me? And YFI, what's in it for you? Her point is, when you ask for a meeting or a favor, be upfront about your agenda and the benefits for both sides.
Even if the benefit for the other person seems small, like just buying them lunch.
Yes. State clearly what you hope to gain and what's in it for them, even if the YFI is just, a nice meal in your charming company. Being direct makes you seem like a straight shooter.
Avoid seeming sneaky later if an agenda pops up.
Exactly. And it also gives the other person the satisfaction of knowing they're genuinely helping you because you are open about your need. She gives the example of inviting someone named Sam to lunch, specifically to pick his brain about marketing, and joking that his benefit was just the food in her company. Transparency works.
And related to that, technique, #82. Asking for favors and getting them.
When you need a favor, Lowndes says, don't be vague or hint around. Ask directly and clearly, and emphasize how much it means to you. That vulnerability actually makes people feel good about helping.
Okay, ask clearly.
Yeah.
What about the debt created by a favor?
You need to be mindful of that unspoken scorecard, which is actually the very last technique in the book. If someone does you a big favor, Lowndes advises waiting a bit, maybe a few weeks, before asking for another one, especially if it feels like a tit-for-tat exchange.
And don't make it seem purely transactional.
Right. Making the expectation of immediate repayment obvious is what little losers do, she says. Big winners handle the debt more gracefully. Let the person who did the favor enjoy the feeling that they do it out of generosity, not obligation. Lowndes tells a story about her friend Tanya, who explicitly said the author would find a way to repay a favor, which Lowndes felt spoiled the gesture. It should have been understood, not stated.
Got it. Okay, let's dive into techniques for building really deep rapport, truly understanding others. Technique, #48, anatomically correct empathizers, seems really interesting. It builds on people having different primary senses.
Yeah, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. But Lowndes says you don't need to figure out their overall dominant sense. The trick is to match your language to whatever sensory mode they're using in that specific moment.
So you listen for the words they use.
Exactly. If they say things like, I see what you mean, or that looks fuzzy to me, or give me the big picture.
You respond using visual words.
Yes, I see, or yeah, it does look fuzzy, or okay, here's the big picture. If they use auditory words like, that sounds good, I hear you, that rings a bell.
Use auditory responses. It does sound good.
Right, I hear you. And if they use kinesthetic, feeling words, I have a gut feeling, I can't quite grasp it, that doesn't feel right.
You respond with feeling words. I understand how you feel.
You've got a good grasp on it. Yeah, that doesn't feel right to me either. By mirroring their sensory language in the moment, you make them subconsciously feel like you genuinely perceive the world the way they do.
Like you're truly on their wavelength.
Exactly. It creates this powerful feeling of being deeply understood. Lowndes gives examples like matching her tap-dancing friend's auditory language or mirroring a colleague's visual or kinesthetic descriptions of a financial plan. It's subtle, but builds huge rapport.
Okay, how about quickly getting up to speed on someone's interests or jobs so you can connect? Technique, #41. Read their rags.
This is a super practical tip for sounding like you belong in someone else's world. Find magazines or trade publications related to their specific hobby or industry, their rags, as she calls them.
And just reading one issue is enough.
She claims reading just one issue gives you about 80% of the conversational mileage. It quickly gets you familiar with the jargon, the key players, the current issues, lets you ask intelligent questions and sound like you're not a total outsider.
So you can talk about, I don't know, competitive dog grooming or astrophysics.
Potentially, it's a shortcut to being able to discuss almost anything with anybody. She mentions reading biker mags, vet journals, golfing magazines, whatever helps you connect with clients or social contacts on their turf.
And for international interactions, technique, #42. Global insider. Basically, do your cultural homework.
Essential. Avoid embarrassing yourself and show respect. Beyond language books, research specific customs, gifting etiquette, body language norms, how to handle business cards, dining manners.
She tells that painful story about her friend Jerry in Japan.
Oh yeah, Jerry basically committed a whole string of cultural faux pas. No Japanese on her business card, writing on the card she received, opening a gift immediately in front of everyone, not having a reciprocal gift, squealing when she got her gift, hugging her new clients.
Yikes. Each one a mistake.
Big mistakes in that context. Being a global insider by researching beforehand avoids that ugly American perception and shows respect, which opens doors.
Another technique for showing you understand someone's world. Technique, #45, echoing. This sounds like the sensory matching, but for specific words.
Sort of. It's about using the exact words someone else uses for things that are important to them. If your client calls their new project Project Nightingale, you call it Project Nightingale, not that new project. If your friend calls their weekend place their cabin, you call it a cabin, even if you think it's more of a chalet.
She gives that example of the guy calling the woman's beloved ski chalet a cabin.
Right. Phil used his preferred word, cabin, which had good vibes for him, but it wasn't her word for her special place. Lowndes says it tanked his chances because he didn't respect her language. Penny, the furniture salesperson, always uses the client's term agency, firm, station, practice, instead of just generic office. It shows you get their world.
Okay. And making complex ideas understandable using comparisons. Technique, #46. Analogies.
Use comparisons drawn from the listener's world, not just yours. Relate complex stuff to things they already know, their hobbies, sports they follow, their profession.
She mentions men using football analogies like Hail Mary pass in business.
Yeah, because football is often a shared frame of reference for many men. The key is the analogy has to clarify things for them. Don't use an analogy they won't get, that just adds confusion. She jokingly mentions the absurdity of women using complex childbirth analogies in a male-dominated boardroom. It only works if the audience understands the reference point.
Right. And finally, dealing with someone who's really emotional when you need facts. Technique, #87. Echo the emo.
Love this phrase she uses. Facts speak, emotions shout. When someone's upset, their emotions are deafening. You won't get the facts until you address the shouting.
So you validate the feelings first. Don't just demand the information.
Exactly. Let them vent. Let them emote. Listen hard for any facts buried in the rant, but your main job initially is to respond with intense empathy for their feelings. Smear on the emo, Lowndes calls it.
And this actually calms them down.
Often, yeah. It shows you hear them, you care about their distress, not just the problem. By intensely empathizing, wow, that sounds incredibly frustrating. I can see why you're so upset. You help diffuse the emotion. Then, once they feel heard, they can usually provide the facts you need. It makes you seem super understanding. She tells how a smart customer service rep calmed her down by validating her fury over a bad copy job before fixing the actual issue.
Address the emotion, then the facts. Makes sense. All these techniques, they really build on each other, from the silent stuff to deep empathy. And Lowndes ties it all back to that idea from the start. Nobody succeeds alone. People help you up the ladder, and the ones at the top are usually great communicators who connected with people.
Which brings us to the final bunch of techniques about gaining influence, getting ahead. Technique, #43, is very practical, talking them into getting the insider's price.
Using jargon to get a better deal.
Basically, yeah. When you're buying something complex or hiring someone for service you don't know much about, learn some key industry terms. Talk to a few vendors first if you need to. Pick up the lingo.
So when hiring painters, talk about prepping and cutting in.
Exactly. Or use jeweler's terms like table, girdle, inclusions when buying a diamond, not just sparkly rock.
And the effect is?
The seller sees you're not clueless. You're not a dumbbell, as she puts it, who they can easily overcharge or give shoddy service to. Sounding knowledgeable commands respect, saves you money, and gets you better results.
Another subtle one for connection and influence. Technique, #44. Make them feel you're of the same class.
This is a bit more nuanced. It touches on how subtle, nonverbal cues and language patterns can make people feel you're similar to them, creating affinity regardless of your actual background. She talks about moving like old money versus new money, but the core idea is adapting subtly to resonate with the group you're with, creating a feeling of shared belonging or class.
And people naturally trust people they see as being like them.
Right. It can subconsciously open doors. Lowndes uses that example of Jeannie, the How to Marry the Rich coach, spotting the truly wealthy guy in ripped jeans just by how he moved like old money. It's about those deep, subtle cues.
Okay. Creating goodwill and maybe ensuring good service later. Technique, #88. Buttercup.
A buttercup is just a complimentary letter you send about an employee who gave you amazing service sent to their boss or supervisor.
So if the person at the phone company is incredibly helpful,
Ask for their supervisor's name and address and send a quick note praising them specifically, mentioning how they helped you or your business.
does it really make a difference?
Lowndes swears by it. Shares her own story of getting amazing service at Staples after sending a buttercup about the assistant manager. It creates goodwill, makes the employee look good to their boss, and she argues it's like an insurance policy. They remember you positively and might go the extra mile for you next time. She even gives a sample letter.
Nice. How about standing out in group settings, meetings, presentations? Technique, #91. Be a leader in a crowd, not a flower.
This is about showing visible support for a speaker you want to connect with or impress, like the company president. Lowndes says, be an enthusiastic first responder.
Most respond.
Be one of the very first people to clap, smile visibly, nod along, show clear engagement, even if you don't agree with every single word.
Why does being first matter?
Because the speaker notices, especially those in charge. Lowndes says, heavy hitters support speakers because they know what it feels like to be up there. The speaker identifies these early visible supporters as potential allies, future leaders. She even connects it to old spy training, identifying confident people by who applauded first. Being an early, visible supporter projects confidence and alignment.
Okay. And finally, underlying all relationships, she says, is technique, #92. The great scorecard in the sky.
This is that unspoken accounting of favors, help given, mistakes made that exists in all relationships, work, friends, family. You need to be aware of the balance, the score.
Like an implicit tally.
Pretty much. If you mess up badly or someone does a huge favor for you, Lowndes says there's an unspoken need to even the score somehow, maybe by doing more for them later. It's not necessarily cold calculation. In healthy relationships, it keeps resentment from building.
And in business.
In business, she says big winners are definitely aware of who's benefiting most. In personal life, keeping that score roughly balanced keeps things fair, keeps love alive, stops one person feeling used. She gives that example of being stood up for dinner. Charles's score plummeted in her eyes. She contrasts people whose good communication makes you want to help them versus those whose ragged dealing makes you hesitant.
It's a give and take.
Yeah.
And ultimately, all 92 of these tricks, from the silent stuff to the scorecard, boil down to one thing the book stresses over and over.
Practice. Absolutely. Lowndes is crystal clear. Mastering these small, smooth moves isn't about being born charming. It's a skill. It takes conscious effort, deliberate practice over time. Making these small choices habitually is what shapes how people see you and interact with you, and ultimately, she argues, shapes your destiny.
Wow. Okay, so we've really just scratched the surface here, haven't we? But we've dived into some of the core ideas and really practical little tricks from Leil Lowndes' How to Talk to Anyone.
Yeah, from making that powerful silent first impression to starting conversations, talking like a VIP, using praise effectively, handling tricky situations like phone calls and parties, really understanding people.
And finally, using communication to build influence and strong relationships, keeping that unspoken scorecard in mind.
And the core message really is powerful, isn't it? That communication isn't some black magic. It's a set of actual skills, techniques you can learn and practice.
And consciously using them can genuinely change your interactions, your success in, well, all areas of life that involve other people. which is pretty much everywhere.
Exactly. These aren't just abstract theories, they're tools, things you could literally try out in your next conversation today.
We've only covered a fraction of the 92 tricks, of course, but hopefully gives you a real sense of the kind of actionable advice in the book.
So maybe here's a final thought to chew on. If mastering these kinds of subtle, often tiny little tricks is really a key to connecting with people, getting them to like you, helping you succeed, what hidden communication habits might you have right now? Things you do without thinking that might be accidentally holding you back?
It's definitely an invitation to pay more attention, isn't it? To the subtle but incredibly powerful world of how we connect or disconnect with each other.
Absolutely.
So if any of this resonated with you, we definitely recommend diving deeper into How to Talk to Anyone by Leil Lowndes yourself. Keep exploring, keep practicing, and keep connecting.